me just, and we are going to start. So, hi everyone. Let me go to my screen here. Hi everyone, and welcome to our second workshop in our integration workshop series. For those of you that attended our first workshop, thank you and welcome back. It was amazing to hear the support and feedback from the first workshop. So we're really excited. The first one was about auto qualifying your leads. Today's workshop, we'll explore agency websites and how design and content play a large part in how your student visitors will be captured as a lead. You'll notice that the things I'll discuss today may touch on kind of more about best practices for a website, especially for agencies and education agencies. But it still relates very much to setting up the foundation to an effective sales automation system. Okay. So what we'll cover today, an overview. Your website is a salesman, an overview. So first of all, we're going to do a quick recap of workshop number one. At the end of the first workshop that we did, we had a few action steps. And so for those of you that didn't get the chance to see the first one, you'll hear about what action steps we talked about, what things that you can do right now to really help with automation. The next thing we'll recap again, the education sales funnel. And you'll hear me refer back to it, throughout the whole workshop series, our education sales funnel. And then we're going to go to the basics of lead capturing. What is lead capturing? What do you do? And specifically, we're going to jump into what is a bounce rate. Okay, you're going to hear me talk about that a lot today. And what is your call to action? Okay, we'll be using that. It's also called CTA. And just like the first workshop, what can you do now? What are some action steps that you can do now or things to consider when you're thinking about your website as an education agency? And then we'll just do a quick summary to top it off. And then, as I mentioned at the top, we'll do a little quick Q&A session there, and we'll choose a few questions that are typed in there to answer, and hopefully it can answer for you. So let's jump into it. Quick recap from our workshop number one. What did we talk about? So I mentioned that we had some action steps here. Number one, stop manual work. So we talked a lot about automation. Automate your data entry. This is with so many tools out there, and we discussed in the last workshop, there really is no excuse to kind of like keep doing this manual work, because you're opening yourself up to errors, mistakes. Even if you get like an email notification for a new lead from your website, and then you're taking that information and you're manually typing it into your spreadsheet or CRM, maybe it's Edvisor, you can always have mistakes, right? You put a wrong number or the email's wrong. So there are a lot of tools out there to think about automating this data that takes that information directly and puts it into whatever tracking system you have. Okay, even if it's a spreadsheet, there are ways to automatically have that data go into a spreadsheet. The other thing we talked about was creating an ideal customer profile, right? This is really important, because you're thinking about, what we talked about in the first workshop, the millennial, right? Or Generation Z. These are the young kids that are kind of coming up these days with going to be studying abroad or thinking about it. They may even be starting to have kids of their own as well, right? And one thing I mentioned here too is I am a millennial. I fall under that category. So think about that ideal customer profile. Now, it's not to say everyone sells to millennials, because especially in the education travel industry, you have group bookings, junior camps, things like that. So not everyone does it, but generally we're looking at that kind of a customer, right? So make sure you know who you're selling to. Right? The third thing we talked about is collecting an API key. Okay, and if you don't know what an API key is, just to recap again, an API key is a string of numbers and letters that allows apps or systems to talk to each other. It allows them to send data back and forth. If you're talking about little bits of information about students or things like that, it allows these systems to talk to each other and then collect that data and sync everything together. Okay. The last one here, test, learn, revise, and repeat. And I know this isn't really like an integration automation thing, but it's more of a philosophy. When you're testing something, you're trying something new, you want to learn from it and then make changes, make revisions, and then repeat that cycle. Because if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're gonna get the same results, right? So you always want to improve. You always want to see how you can make things a little bit better. So that's what we talked about the last workshop. Let's go into the sales funnel that we have here. Education, travel, sales funnel. So again, last time we talked about the middle one. We're looking at converting the leads. So, making the quotations or qualifying your leads based on, whatever system that you have. Today, we're actually going to go one step above that and talk about your websites, right? How to capture those leads. How do they become a lead into your system? Okay. So we'll look at the challenges of a website design, content, and especially how to measure improvement, right? So let's jump into it. Capturing your leads. Okay. It's clear that every website serves a purpose. I mean, every page on your website has to serve some sort of purpose. First, it's to inform, and then to capture some sort of information. You want to capture that lead. It sounds easy, but of course, it's always difficult in practice. So it's something that you kind of refine over time, right? So according to Google Analytics, a website visitor that is not captured or fills out a form usually means two things. Okay, one is the user did not find what he or she was looking for. Okay, or the website was too difficult to use, right? Not being able to capture a site visitor can be a serious challenge, a serious issue if not addressed, right? No one wants to waste time on your awesome marketing campaigns or email campaigns only to find that the website is not properly capturing those leads, right? Before you can fix anything, you need to know how it's performing, right? So before we do that, how can we measure this? And I mentioned it in the overview, but it's something called bounce rate. So what is bounce rate? A lot of you may already know what bounce rate is, but let's look at it. A bounce rate is a metric that indicates the percentage of people who land on your web page, but then go somewhere else without clicking on anything else. So they go to another website or something like that. Okay. What we call this would be a single page visitor. Okay. And there's many tools out there that track this bounce rate for your website. I find personally Google Analytics is the easiest and it's free and the most commonly used. So if you haven't connected your website to Google Analytics, definitely look into it. Of course, like I said, there's other tools out there that you can try to record this bounce rate, but it's very important to know what your bounce rate is on your website in order to begin to learn how to improve your website and make changes. And then you can see, you have to measure against what changes you're doing if they're good, right? So a high bounce rate is significant. It indicates that your website visitors lose interest or can't find what they're looking for, right? So going back to our first workshop, remember our millennial customer, Generation Z, those young kids, you have a few clicks. You only have a few clicks to capture the attention. And as I mentioned, I am a millennial, right? So for me, it's like I have instant gratification. I fully admit, show me what you have on your website within a few clicks or I'm gone, right? So the goal here is to reduce that bounce rate. So how do we do that? Obviously, in the tech world, this means having a clear call to action. Okay, so call to action. What is a call to action? A call to action, or CTA, when it comes to student visitors, it can be something like signing up for a newsletter for your agency, or a contact form to fill out, or even going as far as having a pricing, getting a quote on your website, finding the prices and stuff like that. Depending on how savvy your website is, you could even go as far as to, fill out an application form. Really depends on what you decide. Now, mind you, all of these things that I mentioned is an or, not and, right? You're choosing what these calls to actions are. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples here. So, you don't want to make your customers guess. Tell them exactly what they need to do and make it very, very clear. So here's an example here of a call to action on a website that is, there's lots. Look at how many buttons here on this website. Now, I am taking from a school website, so it's a little bit different, the purpose of what they're doing as a school. And if you know the school, keep it quiet. I hid the name of the school just so we don't want to, embarrass them or anything, but it's not bad. It's just a lot of different things going on here, right? At the top of the page, do you apply to the school now, or do you want to look at English courses, or where do you go? Where do you even start, right? And then, of course, at the very bottom, ready to enroll in English course. That's great, but this person has just visited your website. Are they ready to enroll in an English course and go forward? Some visitors may do their research and come and do that, but this is very confusing. So when we're looking at calls to action on this example, there's just too many, and it's confusing. Are they even going to click? They may even leave the website and go somewhere else to find the information because it's too confusing. So let's look at a better example here. Okay. One single button in the middle of the page. So this one specifically is talking about, this agency is talking about a school specifically, the description, talking about it, and then one single button, hey, make a quote now. So in this example, the student clicks the quote and it's ready to go. And then they begin with, the program they want to start with. So it's very clear. This call to action is very clear. There's one button. The message is very simple. And then you have a better flow and a purpose to this page. Okay. So those are a couple examples there. So going over to the really important stuff. Okay. What can we do now? So what do you want to do? We talk about bounce rate, calls to action. So what can you do to improve your bounce rate? And what can you do to push your call to action? Okay. So 3 things here. Using the right keywords to attract your ideal customers. We've said it before, ideal customers. Who is your ideal customer? You need to know that before you even start, because otherwise you don't know who you're marketing to or who you're designing your website and content to, right? So content is king, okay? Using the right keywords to attract the ideal customers. And going back to the first workshop, we discussed that, is your website appealing to your ideal customers, right? Number 2 here, creating pages with specific content, okay? Having multiple pages with specific content basically allows you to create, have more creativity and freedom with your marketing campaigns, with your email campaigns, because now you're pointing these campaigns to specific pages on your website rather than just go to our landing page, just go to our main site and then figure it out from there. No, you're flowing your campaigns, your marketing. And if you think back to the funnel that we had, the top of the funnel, going down into the funnel, specifically to a landing page, right? Now, when I say specific content, as it relates to education travel, we're talking about like course types, general English or work and study programs, things like that. You can even drill down to locations by country or city. That's even better. Personally, for me, the best performing websites that I have come across in this industry are ones that break it down by school brand. Why? Because they offer unique and specific content according to what that student is looking for, right? At the end of the day, these students are spending their money on a specific school, right? When they're paying tuition, they're going to a specific school. If they want to find information about London or Vancouver or Toronto, you can go to Wikipedia. You can go to many different websites to find information about the city and country, but having unique and specific content to the schools really performs well because you're giving the student, you're giving your website visitor exactly what they're looking for, right? So, personally, I just find those sites drilling down to the school branding is really, really the best performing websites, right? So the third one is kind of obvious, design for mobile, right? Think about how much you use your smartphone compared to your laptop, right? Then think about your ideal customer, that millennial, right? Me, millennial, how much we use our smartphones over our laptops, right? It always seems to be the mobile is the first point of entry into finding information, right? You get a notification from a friend, you get a message, you see an ad, you see an article. You're opening those things on your mobile. You might follow up on the laptop, but your mobile, smartphone is probably the first place that you do a bunch of research. So make sure you think about that in designing for mobile to have an effective, lower your bounce rate and increase your call to action, for that. Okay, so I will mention here though, if you are a little bit lazy like me or looking for a more efficient process, Edvisor does offer a school data integration where you can pull information and data from campuses and courses onto your website, allowing you to keep content updated in real time based on the school partners you have on Edvisor. So this is offered for our CRM customers. If you want to know more information, please do ask me. Okay, and we'll jump into the last section here. Just a quick overview and a summary of what we talked about. I know it was a few points that we talked about here. So is your website helping or hindering, right? Your website is your top salesman or saleswoman, of course, if you design it thoughtfully, right? It provides an extension of your agency brand, okay? And it's a potential to reach your clients 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not only that, it can reach everyone around the world with just a few clicks. So it's really, really important to set your website up for success, right? So what are some of the things that you want to consider? What is your bounce rate? Okay. First, you need to measure it. First, you need a way to figure out what is your bounce rate if you haven't already done so in order to see the improvement of there. And then what you need to do. Okay. Do you have a clear call to action? Or is it really confusing? Do you have 4 or 5 different buttons trying to do different things on your website, or one clear action that the student can click on? Think about the examples that we had before. And then finally, how will you create a unique and specific content to capture those leads? Going back to the content again, like breaking it down, thinking about in terms of like when you are doing your marketing campaigns or email campaigns, where do you want these students to go to, and how can you design your campaigns around that? In other workshops later on, we will talk about everything as a whole to see how everything connects together, and we'll point back to your website to capture those leads. So thank you for joining me today on today's workshop. I hope you learned a little bit. Like I said, it's a bit more talk about best practices, but again, you're setting up the foundation for a successful automation of this whole process. Going back to the funnel. So stay tuned for an email inviting you to the next workshop number 3, where we're going to talk about your whole ecosystem, your whole system from the top to bottom, and what are the different tools and tips and tricks that you can do to automate that system. I might even share with you a few things that we do at Edvisor, but that's highly, highly secret. So I'm only going to share that in the workshop number 3 if you guys attend. So that's happening October 15th in a couple weeks. So make sure you register for that. If you have any questions, feedback, or anything, please email me, Fred@Edvisor.io. I'm happy to chat with you. And for those of you that are on Edvisor, please feel free to see me and find me on there. So right now we're going to go over to the Q&A section. I'm going to see if we have any Q&A questions here. Oops, someone said that they cannot see the presentation. I'm sorry about that. I couldn't see that question. Hopefully you're able to see it in the end there, Hannah. So, okay. So we don't have any other questions there. I guess no one really had any questions, but like I mentioned, feel free to email me, Fred@Edvisor.io. If you have any questions, this video will be available after for you as well. So the person who couldn't see the presentation or couldn't see it, don't worry too much. We'll try to get you the video so you can watch the video afterwards. Okay. So thank you.